You're about to meet 4 Nova Scotians who really love and appreciate pollinators. They'll teach us about what pollinators do, which pollinators live in Nova Scotia, and why they're so important to the food we love and agriculture in general. When we think about pollinators, what typically comes to mind are bees. Yes, bees are important pollinators, but there are many kinds of pollinators living among us. And without them, a lot of your favorite foods and snacks wouldn't exist. So let's begin and meet our first guest. Paul loved bugs and insects as a youth, and now studies them for a living.
My name is Paul Manning, and I am an assistant professor at the Faculty of Agriculture at Dalhousie, and I work and teach and research all about insects. I grew up in the Annapolis Valley in a small town called Canning and spent a lot of time outside with insects, looking at them, playing with them, catching them, and I still do that today.
Paul has discovered that pollinators, including insects, are important for a number of reasons. Some of them may be more obvious than others.
Insects play a really important part in keeping ecosystems healthy. They help plants reproduce by pollination, they help build healthy soil, they are a really important food for birds and small mammals and other lots of animals like frogs and toads and snakes, and they also help keep nutrients cycling through an ecosystem.
So what exactly is a pollinator, and what does one do? We know different types of bees are pollinators, like bumblebees and honeybees. But did you know that the wind also pollinates plants? So do butterflies, moths, bats, birds, mice, rats, flies, and other insects like beetles. It's a very long list, and each pollinator is important.
Pollinator is an insect or another animal that moves pollen from one flower to another, and in that act creates fertilization, which creates a seed. When an insect pollinates a flower, it allows that flower to form a seed. And either that seed is what we eat ourselves in the case of something like an almond, or it's the fruit that grows around that seed in the case of an apple or a tomato or a watermelon.
Many of our favorite foods like blueberries, strawberries, and cherries also rely on pollination to grow. Do you like chocolate? Silly question. We wouldn't have any chocolate without pollinators. Yes, you heard that right. That's because chocolate is made from cocoa plants, which need pollinators to help them form. Pollination happens when an insect or an animal transfers pollen from one flower to another, which starts the process of fertilization. Pollinators don't transfer pollen deliberately. It's a bonus that happens naturally when they visit different flowers to gather their food. Besides fruits and vegetables, we also need pollinators to help keep many different kinds of plants healthy. Plants that you see near your school and home, in parks, the woods, near the ocean, and when you're traveling. All these areas look different, but all ecosystems need pollinators.
Many of our different plants that live in forests and other natural areas require pollinators too, because it allows a mature plant to produce young baby plants that will then become the ecosystems of the future.
Our second video guest also studies pollinators. Like Paul, Alana started to love insects as a child when she was riding her bike along rural roads in Cape Breton. She loved to stop and look at wildflowers. She would observe what bugs and creatures were attracted to them. Sometimes what we start to love during our youth leads to what we will do later for a job, which is exactly what happened for both Paul and Alana, and could also happen for you.
My name is Dr. Alana Pindar, and I'm a professor at Cape Breton University, and I study pollinators, food security, and ecosystems. So when we're talking about food security, let's break it down to our lunch. Let's talk about what's in our lunch right now that everyone is going to be having in a couple of hours, or recess. Food security is our apples, our strawberries, our tomatoes. All of those things are food security, and how thankful we are that we have all of these wonderful crops here in Nova Scotia. Food security is we have them. If we did not have those, we would have nothing. So that's what food security is, and that's what we're talking about. And pollinators bring us these wonderful fruits and vegetables, and that is why we're secure. We feel comfortable and we have food in our belly.
Food security also means that all people, no matter their age or where they live in the world, have the ability to access nutritious food. But we know not everyone does. There are a variety of reasons why. Some communities have poor growing environments, and crops don't grow there well. Some families lack enough money to buy healthy food, and some places lack the social supports needed to help those who are struggling to feed their families. Pollinators play a major role in food security. Our bees, butterflies, flies, mice, and the wind itself help ensure that the fruits and vegetables we love to eat every day blossom and grow for us, crop after crop, season after season. Without pollinators, a lot of our favorite foods wouldn't be available, so we wouldn't have a steady source of fresh food, and therefore food security.
In Canada, we have over 900 different species of wild bees, yet we rely on one, the honeybee, when we're producing a lot of our crops. The reason for that is a honeybee can forage over large distances, and our wild bees don't forage very far. So think about how far your neighbor's backyard is from yours. They don't travel very far. They're very friendly, and they can be found in very close distances. Where the honeybee is more like a soldier bee that will go far distances and protects a lot of our crops and by doing its job and pollinating.
The professor recently made an exciting pollinator discovery while she was researching in Cape Breton. What she has found is helping us learn more about where many bees actually live.
This summer I found a new bee on Cape Breton Island, and it's a solitary ground nester. What that means is it lives by itself and it lives underground. It makes its nests underground. Why that is important? Because so many people think that all bees have hives, and they don't. In fact, 40% of the bees that live in Nova Scotia actually nest in the ground. So we have to make sure that we are giving them a lot of open ground so they can move into our backyards and move into our crops so they can help with pollination.
Our third video guest works with bees in backyards and also with Nova Scotian farmers growing crops. Amanda is an Indigenous beekeeper who owns 12 beehives. The number of beekeepers and hives across Nova Scotia has been steadily growing, which is good for bee health, consumers, and farmers who need bees to help pollinate their crops.
Hi, my name's Amanda Dugas. I'm from Millbrook First Nation, and I am a honeybee keeper and a bumblebee keeper. I currently live in Brentwood, Nova Scotia. The harder you work in beekeeping, generally the more honey you produce and that you're taking care of, because bees are livestock. So it's almost like having a cow or a turkey or a pig that you need to take care of regularly. You don't just put the bees in a box and forget about them and then pick up your honey. So we have a son and a daughter, Gregory, he is 17, soon to be 18, and Sarah, who is 15. And I think the biggest life lesson that they learned with the beekeeping is get out of it what you put into it. So you start working in the spring and you work right through till the fall. And so it's a lot of hard work and a lot of teamwork. So those are two things that they've learned.
Honeybees live in colonies year-round. In the winter months, the number of bees in the hive drops. Honeybees overwinter with their queen, which means they still remain awake and active. Bumblebee colonies are opposite. They're seasonal. That means at the end of the summer, only the queen bumblebee will hibernate throughout the winter. She overwinters alone and lays her eggs to start a new nest in the spring. Amanda's family also helps Nova Scotians who have bumblebee nests where they don't want them, like in attics or in the siding and insulation of a house.
We remove bumblebee nests from people's homes. We started doing that in 2020 as well. We did some work with a not-for-profit organization, and one of their staff people has a particular expertise in bumblebees, and he trained us on nest removal and how to care for them after they're removed and treat them for diseases and pests.
Amanda's children also help with bee nest removal. At first, Sarah was afraid of bugs and insects, like many people. But after she learned more about pollinators and why they're so important, she came to respect them. When removing a bumblebee nest, each member of Amanda's family wears a full protective suit. It includes a veil that goes over the person's head, a thick jacket, pants or coveralls, and rubber boots.
Most importantly is to protect your hands and your face. We just go in and open up the spot that the nest is, and we put on really big gloves, and we're wearing our full protective suit, and then we just lift the nest out, and then we seal up the hole. We hang around for a little while, and when the bees come in the air, we have nets and we catch them, and then we put them into our bee vacuum, and then we bring them home and we treat them for pests if they're ill, and then we relocate them.
Sometimes the bumblebees are taken to the Millbrook First Nation garden, or farmers want them for their gardens and crops. The removed bees are unharmed and are used to help pollination in the surrounding community.
Bees are our helpers, and if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone.
There are many hive locations, or bee yards, around Nova Scotia. The formal term for a bee yard is called an apiary, which is spelled A-P-I-A-R-Y. Amanda's apiary and honey business is considered smaller. That's why she can sell her honey directly to customers, but apiaries vary in size. Our final video guest has many bee yards or apiary sites spread around Nova Scotia. Lauren owns Forest Hill Apiary. She also works with another farm which specializes in fruit pollination and honey production.
My name is Lauren Park and I am a beekeeper in the beautiful Annapolis Valley. And our farm, we have about 80 different bee yard or apiary sites spread across 2 counties. Most of them are not on land that we own, it's land that we borrow from other farmers or landowners. In total, we have over 2,000 colonies of bees. The bees that I keep are honeybees. They are European honeybees, actually. They're not native to North America, but they have been here for exactly 400 years this year, actually. It's the 400th year of honeybees being in North America, which is kind of a neat little fun fact.
Every county in Nova Scotia has beekeepers, like Lauren, who look after hives. As part of her business, Lauren raises queen honeybees. She also rents her hives out to farmers who need bees to pollinate their crops, like apples and blueberries. Her beekeeper work varies from season to season and even day to day.
So the bees kind of go into a pseudo-hibernation in the wintertime between October and March, where we don't disturb them. We leave them be. And in March, we'll start to visit the bees, kind of make sure that all of their disease and pest levels are in check and they're good. Midsummer, I start to raise some queen bees on the farm so we can have some new queens coming through our operation. And then later in the summer is when we'll harvest our honey crop, which is the honey that is in excess to what the bees need to eat for the winter, and start to kind of wrap up as the weather gets colder. The job is different every day, and we really kind of wax and wane with what the bees are up to. The queen bee is responsible for the number of bees in the hive, and in the summertime she will increase the amount of eggs she lays to kind of ramp up the number of bees so they can really produce as much honey as possible in the summer. And in the summer there can easily be 50 or 60,000 bees in each hive. And in the winter, when there are no flowers available, the queen won't lay any new bees and they will overwinter in a small group of about 12 or 15,000 bees per hive.
So, what can you and your family do to help bees stay healthy, continue to grow in numbers, and do their pollination job well? You can plant a variety of seeds, bulbs, or flowers. Ones that bloom early in spring, followed by flowers to enjoy during the warm summer months. And lastly, blossoms that do well late into fall. Pollinators need plants and flowers to visit over the course of many months.
Really, a pollinator-friendly habitat is the key thing with it is as much floral diversity as possible. So, like us, bees need to eat lots of kind of different food group when they're consuming pollen and nectar, which is the 2 things they eat for protein and carbohydrates. So like us, that we try to eat from all of the different food groups and follow the food guide, the bees really need to have a balanced diet of as many different flowers as possible in order to stay healthy.
Pollinators love variety, and so do we. Remember, without them, your breakfast, lunch, and dinner would be a lot less inviting. Pollinators and people rely on one another. Food production and food security are team effort. We all have a role to play. The next time you see a bird, moth, fly, or bee, just let it be. Let it do its job. If you don't bother it, it won't bother you. They're hard at work. You may have heard the saying, busy as a bee. That very bee may be pollinating the pumpkin you carve next Halloween, the watermelon you eat at the summer barbecue, or the blueberries for a delicious pie served at Thanksgiving. Pollinators may be small, but they play a big role in keeping us happy and healthy.